I previously said I would do a little discussion about my experience living off-grid, mostly off-grid, in a remote setting, which I did for 10 months, beginning of October 2020 through the beginning of August 2021. I was situated in a quite remote setting, about a 20-minute drive each way to the nearest small village and the nearest center for where you could have your big box stores and things like that, would be 30 minutes each way, and the nearest city, which would be Halifax, Nova Scotia, was about an hour and 45 minutes each way. So the land where I was in a small village, not even a village, more like a cluster of homes. And the residence where I occupied was about a kilometer, which I believe is 0.6 of a mile, was off. So the residence I occupied was a kilometer from the pavement down a private dirt road. There was one more residence occupied on that land, which was just barely visible through the trees at night. You'd see a few lights, so they weren't really close by, and they were sort of a more back to the landers who'd been there for a very long time, so they were like extremely pleasant and quiet. So I was there to build an addition on that property, on that house, and so I was working and living there. I would often go for days without seeing anyone. The land was all forested. They owned 125 acres, so there was no other buildings within earshot of that place. And even once you got to the pavement, there was not like a ton of residences. And I could see the Bay of Fundy through the trees. So let's say I was probably a kilometer from the water. Now that part of the world has a couple really interesting features. One is Cape Split, phenomenally beautiful, and the other would be Blomidon, which is an indigenous sacred site. So it was very powerful energetically, and the land that I was living on was very pristine. The forest hadn't been messed around with there probably since the 1950s or early 1960s or something like that. Very natural. Of course, the people who owned that land collectively basically were a bunch of hippies. Back in the day, they built those places by hand without electricity back in the early 1970s. And so there was no chemicals or anything like that. So I had a basic electricity, not much, meaning in the way that there wasn't a lot of appliances, and the electrical hookup was pretty minimal. It was almost like a camp. I didn't even have a stove. I had a wood stove for heat. I used 3 quarts of wood through the winter. You can get heat pumps and stuff now, but there was nothing like that in place when I got there, and so wood heat was my only option. A heat pump would be better environmentally, but nonetheless, that was what I was dealing with. So I spent, my son, who's in his early 20s, came down for the latter half of this 10-month stay, and I taught him some skills with carpentry and construction. We built the addition from the ground up. So there were many times where I didn't see anybody for days, like I said, and nobody ever came back there because it was a private road, and it was sort of a dead end. There was only the 2 residences at the end, so I could go a very long time without actually seeing anybody. And when I did go get supplies, I would just run in and grab what I needed and come back. I wasn't really interested in spending a lot of time in those settings. So the nearest town of note would be probably Wolfville, which was 30 minutes drive each way. really pretty little village or small town in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. So energetically and psychically, this was, I have spent time alone, quite a bit of time alone over the years in different situations, but not in such a remote setting and not for that length of time. And so I noticed quite a few things that were very interesting. One, of course, you're in a very pristine natural environment, and nature itself has just beautiful energy. Two is you're not being bombarded by other people's energy all the time. In past study, it was pointed out to me that the more subtle aspects of our auras actually can extend out as far as 60 feet. So if you're in an urban setting, you are being influenced by people around you pretty much constantly. So after spending some time there, without stuff being broadcast at you all the time, you first of all start to become very aware of what's going on energetically within you and yourself. And secondly, you become extremely sensitive to the energies of others as a result of basically reducing, it's like wearing noise-canceling headphones or something. This, in many ways, is almost like an awakening, because without all the distractions and all the external influences, there's nothing but yourself, right? So your sensitivities increase dramatically. There's some background noise here because I'm sitting outside as I record this, and I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia right now. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be any noise. So I became extremely aware and sensitive to things like other people thinking about me. And people I was interacting with, I had satellite internet, which was not very fast, but it worked. It was just enough, and a little bit expensive, but nonetheless, it allowed me to stay in touch with the world. And so I became like super ridiculously sensitive to, people I was engaging with, even conversationally or emotionally, even if they were at a great distance. In one case, I was interacting with someone a lot in Ontario, which is like 1,200 kilometers away, or in driving terms would be, 15, 16-hour drive from here. And I also had many, many, many very clear dreams. I had my first experience of channeling. My ability to converse with my guides became heightened. I wasn't able to do as much actual spiritual practice as I would like to have because I was working and I had deadlines and things like that. So, this is hard work, and I was working in the winter and stuff like that outside. So, you're often tired and whatnot. So, and things have to be done. So I had many, many, many experiences, and some of them I was able to verify by checking in with people about, were you thinking about this? Or in some cases, I was actually able to identify specifically what was going on and what time it occurred with somebody who was 1,200 kilometers away from me. So, fantastic experience for sort of decluttering yourself energetically and becoming aware of the effect of your own thoughts and emotions on your state of being. And I would actually love to be able to live in that kind of an environment without, say, for example, the hard physical work, where I could spend a lot more time in spiritual practice. I've had other experiences spending time alone. Like I said, I wanted to also convey other experiences that I've had that have to do with the land and energies. When I was living back when I still have a residence in Ottawa, Ontario, and at one time a number of years ago, I had an Airstream, which is one of those. It's like a camper that you tow, but it's one of those aluminum ones that are rounded, and they kind of look like a spaceship from the 1950s kind of thing. They're super cool. I had one of those parked next to a private lake on private land, in the woods about 2 hours south of Ottawa. 2 hours if you took the scenic route, which I did because I enjoyed it. And as I noticed this repeatedly, that when I drove to the Airstream, about 45 minutes outside of Ottawa, I would notice a palpable shift in the energy. I would start feeling clarity, and I would start feeling stress releasing from me. My shoulders would start to relax. My mood would improve. My energy would shift. And then the reverse was also true. When I was returning to the city from being in the country, I would notice the stress and energy and tension as I approached the city. So at least from my experience, the energy of the city extended out about 45 minutes driving time, say at probably 40 miles an hour or 80 kilometers an hour. Stupid helicopters. See, this is it. This is the city, eh? So a lot of people who have not spent time alone may not be aware of this or understand the effect or influence that being in a densely populated environment, or even suburbia for that matter, would have on you. And I don't think I wouldn't equate what I'm suggesting with, say, going to a cottage on a lake, where you're surrounded by other cottages, in close proximity. It's not the same thing. You have to go somewhere where you're really isolated. Like I was, miles and miles from most people, surrounded by nature and running water, stuff like that. So if you want to really appreciate your energetic sensitivity, this is a fantastic experience. And time-wise, I would suggest that it would probably take a couple weeks just to start settling into that kind of energy. So yeah, I would do it. What else am I not saying? Oh, the other thing that really I found mattered to me a lot is water. I've never liked city water, chlorine, and I got water from a neighbor who had this amazing well, and actually some other locals used to come by and get their drinking water from them too, because their water was just so beautiful. And you can buy spring water in the city and stuff, but it's packaged and stored in plastic, which I really dislike that too. So yeah, I'm kind of at a point now where I'm finishing up some things here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then I'm deciding whether I go back to Ontario what kind of environment do I want to live in. My ideal scenario would be to perhaps do something like live an hour outside the city, so I can get outside that area of energetic influence from the urban environment, and yet still be able to access the resources and people and situations that may only arise in an urban environment. So an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half kind of thing, maybe, from the sea, ideally. And of course, high-speed internet is a prerequisite. Elon Musk's Starlink, now you can get very fast internet just about anywhere now with that system. It's not super cheap, but you're saving money by living in the country. Socially, I suppose you probably want to. Ideally, you would be partnered up with somebody romantically, I guess, and because that would give you company when you wanted it, and you can still sort of have your time alone. I'm slightly on the introverted side of the Myers-Briggs scale, so I need my downtime and alone time, and whereas an extrovert might not be, they need to be around other people to be recharged. In my case, it's the opposite. I need my down and alone and quiet time to recharge my batteries. But it was an amazing experience, and I'm very grateful, very lucky actually, because it's such a beautiful part of the world where I was living. It's just absolutely stunning. And to connect and be in nature and the quiet. Like, I'm very sensitive now about noise, and I can't get away from the noise in the city. It drives me kind of crazy. And the energy. Like, for example, today I was having a fantastic part of this morning. My energy was amazing, and then I had to run out and do an errand around noon, and poof, there went my good mood, just because I left my bubble and had to go out and into the world and drive in traffic and interact with people and stuff. There's no other reason why my mood shifted or dropped. My energy dropped. Now, you might say, well, I'm being overly sensitive. Well, I'm like, yeah, how do you know what your sensitivity is unless you've actually spent some considerable amount of time in an alternate situation or environment? I've spent quite a bit of time alone over the past number of years because I have Pluto squaring my moon. That's a whole other story. No, actually, I did. It's just sort of wrapping up now, and it'll be out with it outside of a 3-degree orb by the end of the year. Anyway, I wanted to share that experience. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. Well, yeah, of course. There's another cool thing too. Nature gives you a lot of feedback. So, there was lots of things that happened with nature and animals and things like that would make their presence known at times, and that was symbolic in various ways. I think that's the gist of it. Yeah. All right, take care.